Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Andy's Automotive here. Just want to run through. We got a 2015 Dodge Journey. All right, looking at the front hub bearing. I have to forgive my lighting here. Flashlight. Let's see. All right, so we've got. All right, I'm not going to go through and explain how this process is completely done, but I'm going to show you. So you take the rotor off, clean it up a little bit, it was a little rusty. All right, you remove your brakes. You take them off as an assembly, take the caliper bracket off. All right, so you've got 4 mount bolts on your hub bearing here. All right, you got 4 mount bolts. There's no movement up and down, sideways or anything, but you can hear this thing growling at 15 miles an hour. It's terrible. So there's no play up and down, so that was the first thing I checked for. The spindle seems to be perfectly fine, so we cleaned it out a little bit, got a lot of that surface rust out, and then get some Scotch-Brite and fine tune it. One thing, make sure you pay attention to is this washer. All right, this is in between your CV axle and the back of the hub bearing, right? So it does not come with one on the new one. All right, maybe it does in certain brands or whatever. So you got your 4 mount bolts, 15 millimeter is what I use to get them all out. Mount here on the back, you got 1, 2, and then the other 2 just on the other side. So once you break the axle nut loose, right, you've got big guy here, axle nut. All right, I used a 1 1/4 socket. Break it loose. It wasn't overly tightened. This is a 2015 model. It does have ABS. There's an ABS sensor. It plugs just all right. Right where that bolt is right there, that's where your ABS sensor goes. All right, slides down through and it comes out of this hole right here. All right, so you want to make sure that you don't damage that. It's a 10 millimeter socket, taking that baby off. You know, you be careful with it, but it's got the dual piston caliper on it, so when you put it back on, in the event that the calipers have came out a little bit, you can loosen the brake bleeder if necessary, but most of the time you can use a large C-clamp or obviously your brake caliper compressors. But what you want to do is put either a small block of aluminum to cover both pistons or an old brake pad if you're replacing the pads, and use that. That way it applies equal pressure to the caliper, right? Because if you try to push in one, it's just going to push the other one out, and vice versa. So I don't recommend breaking the bleeder unless you absolutely have to, but if you have to break the bleeder to get the calipers to move, chances are you might need another caliper, or it needs a rebuild kit, which you might as well just buy another caliper, in my opinion. Anyway, don't forget the washer. All right, I didn't realize it until I got the other one in, started bolting it in, and then I picked this one up to show my customer, and it actually fell off the back. So that was a good mistake caught. Everybody makes mistakes. Just pay attention to what you're doing. Take your time. I'm not in a rush. I'm doing this casually. I didn't have to break any of the strut loose or none of that stuff. None of this got broken loose. Take off the wheel, take off the brakes, the rotor, take the axle nut off. Make sure you save this washer or leave it on the axle. That way it doesn't get misplaced or forgotten. If it gets damaged for any reason, or if the old hub bearing tore it up, make sure to replace it. This is very, very straightforward mechanical. Changing right here, part changing right here. It's very simple to determine that the hub bearing was bad just by driving it down the road for no time really. I mean, it literally took me half a mile, and I could tell exactly what was going on. Chances are your hub bearing's bad. In the event that it moves enough to damage your ABS sensor, which this one's fine, you're going to need to get a new ABS sensor, and it's just a matter of following your cable. It runs up through here, goes up and connects in the top in the engine bay. Very difficult to see that from here, but it's in there. Again, pretty straightforward. You don't have to worry about that in most cases. So I just watched a video on this just to verify the torque on this. It was a 2019 or 2016 or whatever it was, but I don't have all data at my hand right now. But the torque looks to be 118 foot-pounds. That was confirmed, and honestly it felt about like 100 pounds-ish coming off. So yeah, we're gonna throw this baby back together. And again, just so you can be clear, make sure your washer's on. All right, It slides through. It's got the axle gear teeth and the bearing, right? I already spun this one by hand. It feels nice and smooth. So put this baby in here. Very difficult to do with one hand, but there we go. I recommend getting a cameraman if you want to do this. So anyway, once we got it on there, we need to rotate it. So you can't rotate it if the teeth are in the axle. So this is very difficult to do. So we'll take that back out. Alright. Let's see, 1, 2. There we go. Alright, that's about close as it's going to get by one hand doing this. Sorry about the crappy camera angles, but that's literally it. Straightforward. Your bolts come right through here in the back. Let me get a better camera. See those? 1, 2, 3, and then your fourth one is on the other side. Just right. Camera's in the way. Alright, see. So you guys can see. Yeah, a lot of people complaining about bad camera videos and all that. Y'all can honestly shove it, dude. Like, I'm taking the time just to show you how this general process works. I really don't care about your opinions of a bad video. I'm more than willing to let you come and watch me and record for me, just so you guys know. Anyway, appreciate anybody like and subscribe. This is literally it. Very, very straightforward. Your wheel torque going back on is 100 foot-pounds. Some manuals say 97, but 100 foot-pounds is just fine. It's aluminum alloy wheel, so you want to make sure it's torqued properly. So again, hub bearing right in place. Matter of fact, go ahead and slide one of these bolts in. So I'm going to show you guys a common problem that people make. Some people would go ahead and actually put the axle nut on, which is the incorrect step. So look, you see how it's, I can't get it to thread, right? So this needs to be rotated slightly. So I'm going to put the camera down for just a second. See if I can. There we go. All right. You want it. You can push pressure against this to make it sit flat. That way, when you're putting your bolts in, you're good, right? But I'm going to show you a problem. Some people would tighten that axle down, and look at this. You're lucky here. You're lucky here. But are you really going to be able to put torque on these by hand or by an open end of a wrench? Absolutely not. So you're going to want to keep this axle back. You're going to feed these all the way through. Okay. Don't tighten any of them down until you got all four started, right? So once you have all four started, then you're going to torque them down. I don't have the exact torque spec on those. Honestly, good and tight is going to work for me here. I'm not responsible for your vehicle. As a disclaimer, if you choose to work on your own stuff DIY, that's all up to you. These are not gonna, they're not coming out anytime soon. Anyway, once you get that done, put your brakes back on, take it for a test drive. I would highly recommend, if you're doing both bearings, which I am, I'm good with this because I know that this is bad. The other one's not making any noise. I picked it up. What you can do, just FYI, you can jack the front of the vehicle up, have it in neutral, or to where the wheels will spin freely. You can hold the spring, right, or the strut, but hold the spring and have somebody spin the wheel, or you spin the wheel if you're strong enough, and you can feel the grinding and growling on metal to metal in your hand, right? We went to the right side. I showed my customer. I was like, hold the spring. They held it. Very nice and smooth, no issues. But because this one already went out, we're going to go ahead and replace the right side as well. Just FYI, that's an easy way to test for a bad bearing. In some cases, it's more difficult to do that, but a lot of times you can try to bench test a bearing, and you might not get any kind of actual movement off the car because there's no load on it, right? So in this scenario, my customer thought the right bearing was bad. After I drove it, no, the left side is bad. Well, how do you know that? I only heard it on the right side when I went right. That's because you're putting a load on the left side of the vehicle when you're turning the car right. Think about it. You're leaning the weight. So then when she went to the other side, it actually moved the weight to the other side, so therefore she thought the bearing on the right side was actually bad, but it's not. It is the left side, in fact, and this thing is very, very growly. Again, it's not bad enough to have motion up and down or this falling off or separating. It was more than likely getting very close to that. I've seen much worse, but this customer is lucky that she caught this, you know, and we got it taken care of. So hope you guys enjoyed the short video. Again, I appreciate if you don't comment stupid comments that the camera angles are bad or you didn't show us how to do it and all that nonsense. If you're not able to figure out how to do this based on what I just showed you, you don't need to be working on a car. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you there, and you can take that however you like it, but it's fact of the matter. If you don't know how to take this off based on what I just told you, you do not need to work on a car. Okay, this is very, very simple work. Take the brakes off. You're not disconnecting any brake lines, so there's no need to bleed anything. It's got 4 bolts mounted on the back of the hub bearing. It's got 1 main axle nut here. You want to make sure your torque specs are correct, all right, all the way around. That's the most important thing. Obviously, make sure you torque the wheel back. Put your ABS system back in. Make sure it fits properly. Everything looks identical on these bearings, so we shouldn't have any issues. The ABS is not part of the hub bearing itself. It goes in the actual spindle, right? It's mounted to the actual spindle on the car. So in the event that the bearing was warped enough to cause wobbling of the whole assembly, the spindle could have possibly been damaged. As bad as it sounded, I was actually expecting that, but it wasn't, so we're good. Got this new bearing in, go get everything done. Test drive should be flawless. It's only took me about 40 minutes getting the car up, taking off the old one. Now, I had a video, like I said, I watched earlier just to get the torque spec to make sure I was right on it. Was the cat was banging the bearing off with a hammer. In some cases, that is necessary. Part stores do sell a hub bearing removal tool. It's basically a big slide hammer, but honestly, if you use something like WD-40 or Aero Coil or PB Blaster and just let it sit, you know, give it a little time, and then break each of your bolts loose. Maybe break the hub bearing axle nut here, break that loose, and just kind of break everything loose and then spray it down, right? Let it sit for 10 minutes, get all your stuff together that you're going to need, and then continue with the job. I didn't have to use heat or fire or anything else. I didn't have to bang the bearing off. It literally, I pushed the axle through, I hit the rotor with the dead blow, right? Don't use a metal hammer, use a dead blow. Got this guy, I think it's a 8-pounder from Matco, I believe. Snap-on, I'm sorry. But I got the other ones if I needed them, little babies, the bigger ones, ball peen. None of that was necessary. But I think when I hit the rotor, it probably jarred it pretty nice, so that probably broke it loose. There was some rust on the rotor. We got that taken care of. 100 foot-pounds torque on the actual lug nuts. 120 foot-pounds here. It was 118, I believe, but plus 2 pounds is not going to bother anything. I'm going to do 120 on the axle nut because I'm using the original axle nut. I'd recommend replacing it if you can, just to be more safe. Overall, yeah, that's going to take care of this, and I'll get it back together. Hope this video helps somebody out. Appreciate you guys watching. Like and subscribe, and yeah, have a good one.